In part one of this video, we talked about the myth of the time crunch and how we actually have little to no idea how we spend the 168 hours given to us each week. Not only that, we tend to believe the viewpoints that support this view, making us overestimate how we spend our time. This is why many studies come back from people who log their time, showing that they end up having about 180 to 200 hours each week, when in reality, we're only given 168 hours. I do want to be clear here that if you have not seen part one of this video, then you should probably go watch that before continuing. Otherwise, this one just won't make nearly as much sense. Hi there, friends. Thanks for checking out my channel where we focus on self-improvement, productivity, and work towards becoming better versions of ourselves. As I said in part one, the majority of what I'm covering here comes from Laura Vanderkam's amazing book called 168 Hours. What I'm covering is basically a summary or a condensed version of chapter 1, and just trying to give you a little bit of a taste of what this book covers, to hopefully give you a little bit of an inspiration to go read it for yourself, because there's an incredible amount of wisdom that's given in this book. As we learned in the previous video, the problem is not that we're overworked or under-rested. The problem is that we have basically no idea how we spend our 168 hours each week. But what if we approached time a little differently? What if we start with a blank slate? What if we viewed every minute, as Daytner says, as a choice? This brings us to the first section of this video, entitled 168 Hours, the Blank Slate. Leave aside for a while the obligations and complications of the life you currently have. Picture a completely free weekly calendar with its 168-hour slots. Laura says that when she created a spreadsheet with 168 entries, the first thing that occurred to her was that when you start with a blank slate and fill it with your major components, 168 is a surprisingly vast number. She goes on to divide up the week and show the truth of this statement. She shows that in 168 hours, it's quite easy to sleep 8 hours per night, a total of 56 hours per week, and work 50 hours if you so desire. This adds up to 106 hours, leaving 62 hours per week for other things. While many of us claim that we have no time for exercise, when you add the numbers up, she shows that this simply is not true. If you work 50 hours per week, sleep 8 hours a night, and spend 3 hours per day, 21 total, tending to and interacting with kids, friends, and family, this leaves 41 hours just floating around. In that amount of time, you can easily log the minimum recommended amount of exercise per week, which is 2.5 hours. In fact, you could double that and make it 5 hours per week if you wanted. Let's say that you spend that exercise time going on 3 1-hour runs and a 2-hour run on the weekend. If you do that, you're well on your way to preparing for a marathon. After exercise, this still leaves time for other passions. People who give their time generously tend to be happier and healthier than other people. Yet she says that only about 1/3 of Americans volunteer, and only about 1/3 of those people log more than 100 hours annually. 100 hours per year comes to about 2 hours per week. In other words, she says that even if you work a full-time job and get adequate sleep, spend more time playing with your kids than the average stay-at-home mom while running upwards of 25 miles weekly, you can still spend more time volunteering than 90% of your fellow citizens. Maybe add 4 hours per week for coffee with friends, and that still leaves you 30 hours. This is adequate time for eating, showering, cooking, and or cleaning your room if you work effectively. If you spend 3 hours a day on these things, that adds up to 21 hours total, which still leaves more than an hour a day to experiment with drawing, reading, zoning out to your favorite TV show, or walking your dog in the park. And that's all while working 50 hours per week, far more than the average person works, even if he or she claims otherwise. Take it back to 40 hours, and that gives you an extra 10 hours to play around with. Laura ends this part of the chapter by encouraging us that to make the most out of our time, we need to figure out where it's all going. And she suggests that we keep a log or a time record throughout our day to keep track of where we spend our time and to be very detailed and extremely honest with it, which I might add is very revealing. Real life example. In this portion of the book, Laura gives an example of Michael, who is a software engineer for Google. I was gonna leave this out, but I think it's actually pretty valuable to see a real life example of someone actually lived this out and how it's actually practiced. At the time this book was written, Michael was working full time for Google, spending a lot of time with his girlfriend as well as tutoring his younger sister. He teaches graduate level computer science classes as well as training for an Ironman triathlon, which consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a 26.2-mile run. It seems like his week would be quite busy, but it's actually not as busy as you would think. His notes reveal that he spent just over 40 hours working at Google and about 3.5 hours per week commuting to work and back. He spent a full 15 hours a week training, including 2 swims, several runs, and a 6-hour 100-mile bike ride through the country. He spent 56 hours sleeping, or 8 hours per night, which if you're doing that much exercise, should be fairly easy. His teaching duties added up to 6 hours per week. He spent 3 hours a week coaching other athletes, 2 hours a week going grocery shopping, and 14 hours on chores. When you add up all of these numbers, you get 139.5 hours, which leaves 28 hours per week for other things. After tallying everything up, Michael said, "Despite everything I do, I still seem to have more free time than I thought I did." Laura ends the story by saying that this is what happens when you treat your 168 hours like a blank slate and fill them up with the things that only deserve to be there. Personally, I think this sounds amazing, but if you're anything like me, you're probably getting a little bit tired of statistics, which thankfully the next portion she goes into how you can do this for yourself. But before I give you the next point, I just want to take a second to say thank you for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. It's pretty awesome that you're here, and it's really, really cool to see how you guys support this channel, whether that's through a like or a comment, maybe a subscription. Whatever way you do it, it's pretty awesome, and I would be completely remiss if I did not take a second to say thank you. Part number 3 of this video, your 168 hours. Laura does make it very clear at this portion of the chapter that fitting all these pieces together is going to take some work, particularly if you have a schedule that moves around quite a bit and isn't very concrete. She begins by saying that you need to first figure out what you want to do with your 168 hours, and for most of us, we honestly have no idea, which incidentally is the one benefit of claiming that you are overworked and starved for time, because you kind of get off the hook of having to deal with the burden of choice. She says that while 168 hours is quite a lot of time, time is still a non-renewable resource. So these hours need to be carefully budgeted in order to turn the life you have into the life you want. She explains that the best way to start this project and to get the most out of your upcoming weeks is to keep a detailed report of everything you do in 1 week. On her website, she does provide a Google spreadsheet that breaks it all down for you. So you can just go in there, download it, and fill it out on your phone as you go throughout your day, or you can print it off and just carry it with you and fill it out. So I'll put links for both of those down in the description. Very easy to use. You shouldn't have any trouble with it. She says that the most important thing with this whole project is to be as mindful and as complete as you possibly can. She says to be extremely honest with exactly how you are spending your time. How much time is spent on email and your phone? Do you take breaks, or when do you stop to think? When do you exercise and for how long? Do you spend time on YouTube and TikTok? Basically, you get the idea. One of the cool things that she says is the amount of time that we as a culture spend watching TV that we hardly even like, or just frittering time away, we could be using to make big changes in our life. For example, we could actually write 1 novel every year. Seriously, it takes about 1,000 hours to write a book, and if we spend 20 hours on TV and social media, which most of us do in 1 week, there's your time right there. The key part of this is recognizing this shift in narrative. And one thing that Teresa Daytner says, or explains with how she views time, is she doesn't tell herself that she doesn't have time to do X, Y, or Z. Instead, she says that she won't do X, Y, or Z because it's not a priority. For example, if I say that I don't have time to mow the lawn, that's not entirely true, because if someone offered to pay me like $1,000 to go mow the lawn, you better believe I could go mow the lawn. Nevertheless, it's a matter of choice, not a lack of time. And she points out that if you say that you don't have time, it's putting the responsibility on, your boss or a client or your family or whatever the case may be. And when we do that, we let that power of choice slip between our hands. Saying that something is not a priority turns those 168 hours back into a blank slate that allows you to fill it with what is most important to you. She ends the chapter by saying again that if we really want to make the most out of our time, we have to keep track of how we're spending it. And that, it's a no-brainer, but she pushes the point home again, and really encourages us to break our days down and to keep detailed records of exactly how we spend every minute of our day. She really, really stresses that it needs to be 168 consecutive hours. At the time of making this video, I'm actually halfway through the week of recording what I'm doing, and I'm breaking it down into 1/2 an hour increments. So every 30 minutes, I take a second, I stop and just record, here's what I did, and so on through the whole day pretty much. And it's actually not as hard as you might think. It takes like, 20 to 30 seconds, if that, to just pull out your phone, Google Sheets, bam, type in like a quick description of what I did. I thought that doing it every half hour would get really annoying, but I'm actually finding that even 1/2 an hour isn't broken up enough. Like, preferably 15 minutes is about the perfect amount of time frame. It's really, really neat actually, because I'm actually beginning to break down my days into, little segments where, I got, 15 minutes until my 1/2 an hour is up. What could I do with that amount of time? And it's just giving me a really, really neat perspective of time and how I spend my time, especially. And one thing that really hit me is it's very revealing. Like, you see patterns form very quickly. And like I said, I'm only halfway through, but I'm already starting to see patterns that I'm not particularly enjoying. And so that's, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to review this. And at the end of the week, I'm actually gonna make a video where I go through my entire week, half an hour at a time, showing you guys exactly what I did every waking minute of the entire week. Yeah, so yeah, that's gonna be a scary video. And I'll probably actually post that on my website at some point. So if you wanna go in and keep me personally accountable with how I spend my time, feel free to check out my website, which is down in the description below. She says that the remainder of the book is basically to teach you exactly how to make the most out of that time, out of the 168 hours that are given to you each week, and how to schedule and use them appropriately. And ultimately what the purpose of this video is to give you a little bit of an insight into the book, because like, yeah, you're gonna learn stuff from this, you know, this video watching it, but nothing even close to what you're gonna learn from actually reading this book. So if you haven't already, like, you know, bought it by now, I would highly recommend you get it. You know, I paid like $4 for this thing. Like, it's incredibly worth it. Think about it. If you, okay, let's say you spend $30 on this book, which is way more than you obviously would have to spend. If that saves you even an hour every day or half an hour every day for an entire week, like, that is a lot of time that you can do so many other things with. Like, you can start a YouTube channel with that amount of time. Like, so time is non-renewable. It does not come back after it's gone. Money does. So yeah, time is like the most important thing, in my opinion, to invest in and to learn how to manage and control. So links will be down in the description for this book. Highly recommend you check it out. Now, there's a really good chance that you hopefully thought of someone else that could benefit from hearing about the topic that we covered today. If that's the case, I would highly encourage you to send them this video. If they choose not to watch it or they don't want to be interested in it, that's totally fine. That's on them, it's not on you. But it's worse yet if they never have the option to hear. So with that being said, as always, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next video.